Okay, to get started, we're here on our demo site. And our demo site, we have a bunch of different documents that have a bunch of random words in there. And the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and get to the area where we need to create our vertical. So where you actually can create verticals from the SharePoint administrative interface in Global Admin. You can also do that on any site and create it specifically for the site. So that's what we're going to do in this demonstration. So there's multiple ways to get there, but overall the way I typically do is I go up to the cog, to settings, to site information, and then hit the view all site settings. So a little bit of an extra step there than what it used to be. And then this is your typical site settings screen that you see. And down here, if you have this enabled, you're going to see the Microsoft search area, and you're going to have a single link there for search insights and configuration. Once we're on this screen, this is typical if you've ever seen how things appear in kind of the global search and intelligence on Central Admin. You will see something very similar here where you can kind of see your insights in there. But the important thing here is that we also have our verticals. And with our verticals, you'll see that there are separate, like all files, news, images, and those are ones that are default and always set up for you. But then you can see actually that there are some additional ones here that I have created. Now, instead of actually creating a new one, I'm actually going to go ahead and edit an existing one. And the reason is because one of the little hiccups or something that you might say about Microsoft Search right now is that when you create these verticals, it's kind of very variable as to when you're actually going to see the vertical show up in search results, and that can take anywhere, what I've seen, from 4 to 6 hours up to 24 hours. So instead of trying to do this in two pieces, I decided to do it here where I had already created one. And you'll see that I created one called Monkey Content. I'm going to go ahead and double click it, and it's going to open up the editor interface for me. And you're going to see here that I just kind of get a view of what I've created, that the SharePoint's content source, what the query is, and I can just go edit. And really what this does then is it takes us into our wizard here. And if you were creating one, the first screen you're going to get in is you're going to get the name of the vertical. So this is kind of up to you, but I will say that if you look in search, this is what will show up in the search at the top of the vertical. So you can see we have the verticals, all the verticals that you saw on that list there, and this is what shows up at the top. So you want to kind of consider that name and really what you want to call it, that it's descriptive, that it helps describe well what the users are going to be getting out of that content, and it's going to be something familiar with them. So anyway, in this particular case, I called it Monkey Content, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my next. And you'll see that on the next screen, you really only have two selections. You can select a content source of SharePoint, which is typical if you've done SharePoint search in the past. You're going to be able to then narrow it down around all the SharePoint sites and that, or you have connectors, and I'll be dealing with connectors in a later segment of my series, but connectors is connecting into external data in that. So I'm going to go ahead, one of the little quirk here is that I need to switch back, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now that we've started the process of creating our vertical, and we've selected the content source, which is going to be SharePoint, now we get to add a query. And one of the things you might note here is with add a query is that it shows as optional. And the reason it shows as optional is that overall you could have a vertical that just shows everything from wherever it's pulling from. You're probably not going to use that a lot in scenarios with SharePoint, because the overall desire around creating a vertical in SharePoint is to narrow down the scope of what's actually returned as part of the results. Where you're probably going to use that more commonly is if you're doing a connector and you're pulling in data from an external source, and maybe you want your vertical to show all data from that external source. So in add a query, you'll see that you're going to use the keyword query language. And if you're not familiar with that, that was something that we've been using since about SharePoint 2010 with search back then. all the way up through the Classic Search and SharePoint Online. You do have a Learn More here. If you need to learn more about it, you can quickly go into the Keyword Query Language syntax reference and kind of learn about all the different ways that you can write keyword queries. Pretty much the most typical thing is you're going to look for particular values in text or something along that lines and there. And so in this particular case, you can see that I have the word title here and monkey and path, and then the path to our demo site that we had up there. And where I got title and path is below. You'll see here that there's a list of all the different queryable properties that can be used across here. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but know that it's really, really long. Overall, my recommendation is if you're going to do this kind of work, to really do some searches out there and really look at some of the most common fields that are used for this, which are typically things like title and path, file extension, file name, file type, different things like that that tend to be commonly used. But really, if there's any piece of metadata you have out there that you want to be able to narrow down the scope of a bunch of results that are coming back, you have the ability to do that. So just kind of keep that in mind, including ones that maybe you custom created as well. So here, what I've done is I've created the query, and with the word title here, you'll see that I have title with a colon behind it. The colon is an operator, and that operator stands for contains. So an operator being things like equals or greater than, less than, not equals, those kind of things. So in Keyword Query Language, it uses the colon to describe the word contains. So otherwise, what I'm saying is narrow down the scope of the results for anything where the title contains the word monkey inside of it. And then much like that, the path being the path that's up in the URL up here, the path contains, and then I have the demo site here in that. One important thing to note, though I'm not going to go in a lot into the science of keyword query language and how to use it, is that if you don't add some type of qualifier here, typically what's going to happen then is it's going to always be looked at as an and in that. So what this basically says is title contains the word monkey and the path is on the demo site. So if you wanted that to be or, you would have to actually put in an or there in that. The thing to know is this is not case sensitive, so it's always going to look at all cases. And also where I have this along the side, I could very easily just put this down to be a little bit cleaner and do that. So once we're done and we kind of set up our query here, we can go ahead and click Next. Once you've created your query, now you're able to add filters. And filters are the ability to be able to kind of refine your results down by selecting from a list of items that are from a piece of metadata. And so if you were familiar with classic SharePoint search, that would have been what we called refiners back then, but now it's called filters to kind of more streamline the name in that. And here you'll see that I've already added a couple filters to my vertical, one for function and the other for client. But what you should see right here is the property that I'm referencing is out of the managed property list inside of SharePoint. And you'll see that I'm actually doing a refinable strings here. I'm going to go ahead and add another one, but I want to just take a moment just to mention why we use managed properties. And that is very important. Managed properties are what is mapping a piece of data inside of SharePoint list or library for us. And one of the most important things that needs to happen to be able to use it as a filter is that managed property must have the state of refine. So otherwise that it's a refinable in that. And right now, currently, besides some of the built-in ones that Microsoft has done, you can't create your own managed property and make that managed property refinable. Instead, what you have to do is you have to select one of their standard ones here that are already set up as refinable. and then map your crawled property that goes along it. So you can see that where the function one was tied to string 00, you have the function field that comes out of my libraries on my demo site. The same with the client one that comes out of for 04, and then you can see here in 05, which is the one I'm going to use, is a piece of metadata called doc type. So it's just important to know that the only fields that you can use inside filters, only managed properties, are those that have the refinable flag set on them. So I'm going to go ahead and add this filter. So I'm going to click add a filter, and this is going to bring up a dialog where I have a list, much like I did on the query side of it, where I can look at all the different fields here. And I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down until I see refinable strings. Unfortunately, at least right now, there's no way to search through these, so you kind of have to know the name and find it in the list, which is a little bit inconvenient, but not too bad. So now that I've selected refinable string 05, which matches the one that was on the managed property list, I'm going to go ahead and click next. I can give this a name. I'm going to go ahead and give this the name of doc type. In that, you'll see that it is set up to the property of refinable string 05, and this is the type of text, which is automatically set as part of the managed property. So the only other selection I can actually do here is how users can select. So I can allow them to select a single value or multiple values to be able to do this. So in this particular instance, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at a single value, which means that they can only select one type of document. If I selected it to, or switched it to multiple values, they'd then be able to search and filter by multiple types, which could be nice. So I'm going to go ahead and hit add there. You're going to see it's added in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and click next. The last step in creating our vertical is to review it. It's going to give us a summary here of what we've created, the filters we've added, the query there, where the content's coming from in the name. And then the last piece that's very important is it initially comes out as disabled. So at the disabled state basically means that you can create these and enable them at a later time. But until you actually enable the vertical is not going to show up in your search results. So once you've verified everything, and you can quickly switch back to things if you need to make updates and changes. But once you've done that, you will have the ability, in this case it says update vertical, but overall it'll say create vertical. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and then we will be done. And once it says the vertical's updated, I can go ahead and click done, and I can see that the vertical is now showing up. You can see that it's been updated at this particular time, and everything is ready to go. Once we've created our vertical and given it the necessary amount of time for the vertical to show up, I can then come back to my site, and I should be able to see the vertical when I go ahead and do a search. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search on a word that I know is inside some of these documents, the word of design, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And you'll see that my search results come up here, and I am immediately put on my all vertical here, and you can see all the different ones, and I can easily switch over to monkey content, which is now giving me filtered only files that are coming from our demo site right here, and also only files that have the word monkey inside of it. You can see now that I can easily select my filters here, and you'll see that the one that I created, the doc type, I'm going to go ahead and look through all the doc types here that I have. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit design data in that. And then I'm just to give you an example of what the multiple value looks like, I can easily hit estimate and checklist here and hit apply. And it's going to bring it down to things that just match that data.